Well, it was announced in this past hour that former First Lady, former Second Lady, uh, wife of President George H.W. Bush and mother of President George W. Bush, Barbara Bush, died. And it had only been 2 days since it was announced she would not seek medical treatment and would just stay at home and get comfort care. Uh, this comes 2 years after the death of First Lady Nancy Reagan, who all of you will, I'm assuming, be familiar with as the wife of President Reagan, and makes the elder Bush, George H.W. Bush, the first American president since Richard Nixon to outlive his spouse. Um, you know, I would probably say, because I have kind of this indifference towards most candidates' wives, whether they're first ladies or just people that aren't office holders that happen to be family with someone that is. But Barbara Bush probably did more for education than her husband or her son combined. And the reason for saying that is back in the first couple of months of the elder Bush's administration, he sent Congress a several point program about what he wanted to be done in regards to education. They just let it sit there. Um, and it basically was just this game of let's play, tanglehold and whatever you want to do, where she was able to actually go around to these schools and make speeches and talk about the importance of literacy. And let me say hello to Wicked Jester. Um, and, I have a lot of respect for anyone that thinks learning and becoming familiar with just writing and various other simplistic measures of everyday life are fundamentals. People who have that view. Okay, Dirk says Barbara Bush was the greatest. If I'm not mistaken, she was an important role in the Head Start pre-K program. Head Start started under LBJ, just to state the record here. But she certainly did play a big role in education, and that's something that I kind of think in light of many of these politicians kind of just wanting to talk about what something having to do with the president or something having to do with some other country's ills, to have a individual that's not in office but still has a household name, as her name was known by the Reagan years and just up until then, until now. It was refreshing. And let me say hello to John, and then Wicked Jester saying literature is a very important skill set. I agree. Um, she just was. It's sad. I've kind of learned from many of these types of stories to, especially if it's someone that lived to an age that is kind of up there, not so much be mad that they're deceased, but be happy that they were around for as long as they were. But I kind of got used to just reading stories of her going to hospital. I remember, I think it was around Christmas time of 2013 or before New Year's Day of 2014. She went to the hospital and they let her out. And then at the beginning of last year, she was admitted and came out. So it's just a running theme of hospital trip after hospital trip. And you have to imagine it'll start taking a toll on a person when they have this recurrence to them. But also, I would wager to say that this has done much to kind of renew my interest in the older Bush. I consider uh, George H.W. So if I were to rank all the presidents after him, I would give him a 7, and I would give all the other ones, the highest would be a 5, the lowest would be a 2 or a 1. He truly is the last shred of I like him more than Reagan, certainly, because I think his foreign policy was not this police the world interventionalist, drag us into some war that never ends, strain that we've seen with Obama and Trump and his son. And if there's one decent thing that's come out of this event of today, and over the last couple of days they've spoken more about her, I can at least attest to the fact that I'm more inclined to speak about him. I'm just worried that he's going to end up having something happen. If you guys can't recall, back in 1993 when Pat Nixon died, President Nixon, or former President Nixon at that point, only lasted another, I think, 8 months. She died in June of that year, so he passed in April. He just grieved himself the entire time, and even though the illness was not directly related to that, you can still make the argument of yes, this was something that factored into what happened with him. Okay, Wicked Jester is asking for my thoughts on FDR. I don't like him as much as Truman, but that's mainly because of the internment of the Japanese. Other than that, I'm fine with him. I think if he's not my favorite, but anyone who says he's their favorite, I can completely get behind, understand. It actually kind of bothers me when people say that JFK and Reagan are the best. I don't have a problem. You say that's my favorite, but when you say the best, because personally, I have a higher opinion of LBJ, Truman, and Carter than any of the other ones. And, well, maybe with the exception of Eisenhower, but I would not consider any of those four to be the best, because I think you have to separate your personal feelings from overall positive impact. And even if I think Truman was a much more moral man than FDR, I can't, pretend we didn't get the New Deal or Social Security or any of the other programs that have lasted since that time, and actually going after the banks. So I hope the older Bush is able to, keep in place, and I expect to speak more about him and other figures as time passes. I was just kind of surprised by the quickness of it. Even if you hear that someone is not doing well, days later this happens is kind of surprising. But you have to remember, in the current stream of life, and just, I guess, since life has been a thing, you can go at any minute. In the last 7 minutes since the stream's been going, you can actually have had several people die, and we just don't know about it. So it's a bittersweet farewell, but be happy that she lived as long as she did. I certainly would have appreciated the same duration by people I've known, but I'm glad that she was able to get as far as she did and make the impact on education that she did, and I can only hope that many people follow her example of taking education seriously, because as these past couple of presidents and just statewide officials have proven, that's anything but the case. So, Dirk, Wicked Jester, Saber Wolf, John, see you later. And I appreciate your tuning in. I'll have something else out tomorrow. O'Donohue asked me, yes, she was the older Bush's wife. And if you don't know who that is, you can leave me a, a message and I'll respond to you. I'm actually not playing. I will, explain. It's the only thing kind of defensive thing I have is if the person will actually answer back. Though I have nothing negative to say about her either. So I appreciate it. Have a good day.